Hello everyone, David here with a really quick video. It's not going to be a big deal, but I noticed lately I haven't been doing an awful lot of opinion pieces, but this one I think needs to be made. Against any kind of judgment whatsoever, I feel like it would actually be the wrong thing to not make a video like this before it's too late, before the time passes, and it's too late to give my condolences. So, if you guys haven't been hearing or keeping up with the news lately, and when it comes to businesses and corporations and things like that, you will realize that based on the breaking news from Twitter and Facebook or whatever, Toys R Us is unfortunately hitting a very harsh bankruptcy. So harsh that they have announced that they're completely closing all of their stores. Now, I don't know the full extent of the details. I don't even know if they're going to retain being an online marketing type of model like Amazon is, but the brick and mortar stance of Toys R Us is going away. And shops are going to be closing down. Employees are unfortunately going to be let go. And of course, we have various clearance sales going on right now. Of course, they kind of pick and choose which type of items they're selling. I mean, I've checked myself and I'm like, oh guys, come on. There could have been some other things that you guys could have parted ways with bigger sales, and instead they're just like moving the assets around and probably selling them to competitors or doing something. I don't know exactly how things like this, how closures and shutdowns of certain corporations and businesses exactly work, but I just know that after, I think it's literally like 70 years, Toys R Us is going away. They first started out in 1948, I think. I can't remember if they were initially called Toys R Us. I did this a little bit off the cuff. I know I should have done some proper research, but that's not the point of this video. The point of this video is not to give you guys a history lesson on Toys R Us. You could probably find other things online for that. This is more like a personal vlog as to what Toys R Us really meant for me growing up as a kid. Because Toys R Us kind of has something to do with the creation of this channel. Because it was through Toys R Us and of course other outlets like Target and Walmart and any other places like the mall where I picked up my toys. But it was through Toys R Us that was mainly my toy and figure supplier for a large majority of the time. Because growing up, that's where I would get my action figures that I would normally and routinely play with. And one of the earliest memories that I have is here in Victorville, California. My local Toys R Us. It looked very dated. They had like glass cases running throughout the place. They had a couple of kiosks with like the Sega Dreamcast and then the N64 and then the PlayStation 1. And they were very high above. I felt like I couldn't even see jack shit on the screen that they had on top because I was just a little kid. I was like 2 or 3 years old. Probably maybe 4, give or take. And I remember just running up and down the aisles. I'm pretty certain that my mom lost me a couple of times there. But one of the first figures I distinctly remember my mom buying from Toys R Us was there during either 93, 94, maybe 95, but I'm pretty sure it was around 92 or 93 or 94, around the time that Jurassic Park and all those movies came out. And that figure is none other than the Red Dragon Megazord from Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. And I do have a review of this bad boy here on my channel. You can check it out. But this is arguably probably my earliest memory of going to Toys R Us and my mom getting me a figure. And I remember being ecstatic, pulling it out of the foam packaging and playing around with it. And I remember when we were leaving, there being the other Mighty Morphin Power Ranger Megazords next to them, like the Triceratops, and I think it was the Green Ranger Zord, you know, the dinosaur one, because I remember them selling that model as well, that you can then combine with this guy right here. But my mom could only afford one at the time, I'm sorry, but I'm a little doubtful as to whether or not she was able to afford both, or at least, you know, pull out a layaway or something, I don't know, but anyways. This came out of it, and I'm still grateful for that. You know, I'm joking about her not being able to get both, but I'm grateful that, first of all, she went with the Red Dragon. Red's my favorite color, but I prefer this guy a little bit better because of just how cool he looked, and he was a dragon, he was all badass, whatever, and I watched the TV show along with it, and here we are, about 26, almost 27 years later, and the bad boy's still with me. Of course, he's collected a number of dust, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to show it off on camera very well. But if I pull these dragon ears out, the ends right here are literally all chewed out. And that's because my dumbass would chew these things as a kid. We don't know any better when we were kids. And that's where those chew marks kind of came out of. As well as a couple of other little bits that are slightly chewed. It might have been in due part to me or maybe my younger brother as soon as he fucking popped out of the womb. But yeah, this was one of my earliest memories of getting an action figure from Toys R Us. and as well as various other occasions where, like I said, my mom would lose me. I would be playing on the N64 kiosk, and that's where I would kind of dabble into what kind of games I was hoping to pick up for the N64, like GoldenEye, even though I ended up not doing that, but I ended up going more for the likes of Star Fox 64 and Nintendo Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. And then one thing led to another, and there was actually a point where I wasn't collecting an awful lot of toys. Personally, myself, I would just receive toys, whether it be for Christmas or for New Year's. Elementary school would go by, and ever so often, every weekend, if my parents were able to have the time, they would take me to Toys R Us, and I would just look at everything that they got. And even if I wasn't gonna buy something, I would at least just course through the halls and check out exactly what they got. And that's how it was for a time, up until I want to say 2006, 2007, when the word got out that there was going to be a new Transformers movie. And that's kind of when my affection for collecting, like me personally going out into the store and collecting action figures, would actually stem from. And that's where we dive into the point in history where my YouTube career kind of got started, because it was then in 2007 where we had the movie line for the Spider-Man 3 figures, and then the movie line figures for the Transformers movie. The very first 2007 Transformers movie came out, and I remember having an access to the internet, access to these figures, and finally picking up a couple, and also going on YouTube and watching other people's reviews of these action figures is exactly what motivated me to want to start my very first channel, Black Spider David. And that's where I went actively to Toys R Us and hunted down all these figures. I would hardly go to any other retailer. I wouldn't go to Target, I wouldn't go to Walmart. I will go to Toys R Us because I remember that being my go-to place for action figures. And that's where I picked up the majority of my figures. Like I said, give or take, if there was something that was out of stock from Toys R Us, I would go to Target, I would go to Walmart. But for the most part, it was Toys R Us, and that's where I picked up Leader Class Optimus Prime, and then Deluxe Class Bumblebee, and all those other different types of figures that were coming from the 2007 movie line. That's where I created my channel, Black Spider David, created all my videos, and they took off. They took off rather well. They did exceptionally. I actually became partner at one point, but I lost my partnership because things were iffy at the time. They didn't have their shit together. I created my new channel, Dark Spider David, where I re-reviewed not only those 2007 movie figures as well as the Spider-Man figures, but then I jumped forward into the Revenge of the Fallen line, which leads me to probably my go-to contemporary masterpiece. If anybody asks me what's my favorite quote-unquote contemporary figure, so it doesn't count for any of the 80s figures or stuff like that, like masterpiece figures of reinvented versions of like the 80s Optimus Prime, like the original 80s truck version of Optimus Prime or original Megatron, but I'm talking about something that's a little bit more recent and up to date, would have to be Leader Class Optimus Prime from Revenge of the Fallen. This is still to this day, he's got a bunch of dust all over the place, still to this day, a 10 out of 10 figure. I fucking love this thing. Wish I would pull him out a little bit more and play with him. But I got him from Toys R Us. I remember distinctly getting him from Toys R Us, walking out of it, and just being so joyous after watching all of those reviews. And also very excited to get to my review and finally go home, set up the camera, and do it. And I remember that being in 2009 when my Dark Spider David channel was taken off. And if you go back and check out my channel, you'll notice that this guy, along with various other figures that I did for the Revenge of the Fallen line, are my most viewed videos up on the channel. And that's cool. And guess what? Toys R Us has a part to do with that. So unfortunately, as the years went on, and I actually have a little bit of a conspiracy theory for this, or at least a slightly unpopular opinion, but as the years went on, these figures started to get even more expensive, not just the Leader class, but also the Deluxe class, the Voyager class, even the fucking Legends class. That by the time we got to Dark of the Moon, I started to run out of space, but more importantly, I started to run out of money because I started to notice the list prices for these things were going up and up and up. And that's what eventually led me to give up on like movie lines to collect, going through like all of the movie lines and collecting every single one of versions of these figures. So I hardly ever collect action figures anymore. And if I do, it's the occasional Hot Toys figure because I just like the character so much, or I like the design, or I like what they did, or a specific other figure from Hasbro or even from Takara that I look at and go, okay, that's awesome. Case in point would probably be Masterpiece Optimus Prime over here from Takara Tomy. He was awesome. Let me put him right here on the remote, if I can. There you go. He was awesome, and I thought to myself, alright, he's not ridiculously expensive, I'll buy it. But guess what? I didn't buy it from Toys R Us because it was only available online. And that leads me to my little conspiracy, is that I think that maybe, and of course this is not Toys R Us' fault per se, but I think it's because of this high price for action figures per unit that led to the inevitable demise of Toys R Us. Because hardly people are going to these stores anymore, and they're noticing that toys are getting more and more expensive, and kids are glued to fucking tablets and cell phones with Candy Crush and Snapchat games and just a bunch of other shit. And they're not playing with these anymore. And that's why Toys R Us is going under. And I'm not going to say that Target or Walmart are necessarily safe either. Even though those are department stores because they got other things. Toys R Us was just solely focused on toys. And unfortunately, toys are not exactly facing a giant demand these days. And I think we're circling back around as to why we're getting an awful lot of remakes of video games, remakes of movies, is because the majority of people who are buying figures are actually the avid grown-up collectors such as myself, or at least formal avid collectors such as myself. And that's why we see the demise of Toys R Us, and I wouldn't be surprised if more and more stores like Sears, Target, Walmart start to close down because they started to take a hit at their capital because people are not buying toys. And that department might just be shut down completely from these stores where you try to find the toy aisle and it's not going to be there. And that's a sad sight. That's a sad sight, but that's only going to be fixed if they fix those goddamn prices. And maybe then I'll become a collector myself once more. Avidly, where I'm actively going to the store every second or third week, picking up a new haul and then coming home and reviewing all those bad boys and then putting them on my channel. Because that would be dope. That would be dope to bring back a time that I really, really do cherish and reminisce about, especially when I'm holding a figure like this in my hand. But it's sad to see that they're just not doing anything about it. And all I can do is really live with memories of me reviewing figures up on the channel, but more importantly, memories of what Toys R Us used to be. Before the announcement, or before they even had to start talking about closing down their stores, they actually implemented a new aisle in their stores, and maybe it's not exactly every single Toys R Us that has this, but my local Toys R Us had a little corner of an aisle where they had collectible figures, like adult figures. And by adults, I don't mean like, you know, that were naughty or anything. No, they were just like for movies like Evil Dead or Alien or stuff like that. Stuff that you would love to put up like on the shelf. And they had that, and I would check it out once or twice a month because they had some cool stuff there. Like Rick and Morty stuff, it was pretty cool. And then we're starting to slowly see other stores kind of adapt that, like GameStop. And now, it looks like it was just a fruitless effort because it wasn't enough to save the store. And so, the memories of going in there, checking out to exactly, just for the fun of it, what exactly they had in stock, as well as picking up the new figure of the week, and then going back even further, just to lose myself in the store, get away from my mom, and pick out what exactly I can convince her to buy me as a little kid. Whether it be the new Power Rangers toy, or the new superhero thingamajig, Toys R Us will definitely be part of my childhood. And it's not going to die there, despite it going away. Rest in peace, Toys R Us. So, now that I got you in a very somber mood, please post in the comments below where you guys' most fondest memories of the Toys R Us chain. What do you remember most fondly from your earliest childhood memories, going to the store, picking out action figures, or even some of the most recent memories you've developed there, from being a goofball dumbass going to the store and then putting on some helmets and stuff like that. I just don't do it frequently because other kids have worn that. It's nasty. That's germs. Okay, just be careful with that. But just share me all of your guys' experiences, because I want to get a conversation going here and talk about exactly what we remember mostly about Toys R Us. So, that does it for me, guys. I'm about to jet on out of here and probably visit my Toys R Us one final time. I encourage you guys to do the same, just as a last thing for old time's sake. So thank you guys so much for watching. I'm tearing up. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care. Battery still works. Pressing the same punch buttons or doing the same combos over and over, eventually it wears out thin, especially when you go through like 5 or 6 waves of enemies and you don't exactly know when the level's going to end. It starts to get a little infuriating. Did I die? Oh, wow, I wasn't even paying attention to my health. Goodness gracious. Oh, for that fucking sake.